relatively small affair with relatively few casualties. In late 1917, the Germans and the British, in just one battle in this war, suffer between 200 and 500,000 casualties each. You think of deeper, different, more fundamental questions when you not only suffer casualties like that, but you do so over and over and over again with no appreciable change, nothing certainly worth all that. And you begin asking fundamental questions about these treaties you wrote at an earlier time in this war. How many Frenchmen is it worth losing to regain the lost territories of Alsace and Lorraine? How many German young people is it worth to hold on to Belgium? How many Austro-Hungarian troops, or conversely Italian troops, is that particular area near Trieste worth? How many Dominion lines and Indian lines and British lines is post-war British involvement in the Middle East worth? Well, if it's the Battle of Omdurman, we're talking tiny numbers, it's certainly worth it. There's a number that you're going to get to when it's not. The First World War challenges a lot of people to ask those kinds of questions. And the people that were operating under the same sort of mentality that would have been present at the Battle of Omdurman are red-faced when these treaties show up, showing that that's just what they're like. They haven't changed yet, and the treaties are going to have to be fulfilled anyway. Meanwhile, if you didn't feel bad enough in late 1917, when the Bolsheviks released this information, in January 1918, in part because the Bolsheviks did release this information, President Woodrow Wilson in the United States released something called the 14 points. Now, the 14 points, if the Bolshevik move that makes the rest of the world look like a bunch of capitalist warmongers is like a left hook, the American move in 1918 in January is like a right cross right afterwards to all these European world powers, because the United States, hitting from the other side of the idealism scale, are suggesting that you should have a war based on things like mutual respect. Woodrow Wilson says nice things, for example, about the Germans and how the Americans and the rest of the world do not begrudge the Germans a shot of German greatness and all this kind of stuff. In other words, conciliatory stuff if you're trying to have a deal and make everybody come to the table feeling like, yes, we can work together. But if you're the French and you've already suffered more than 1 million casualties against these people, you had a war against them a generation in the past, you're not really going to need to be very conciliatory. And then Wilson starts talking about stuff that's as idealistic as anything the Bolsheviks are putting out, and a lot of it sounds very similar. For example, here's how Wilson leads into his 14 points, and notice how often he talks about a change in, what we could maybe call today global public opinion, or international morality and values. He says from the beginning of his statement that's gone down in history as the 14 points, quote, "It will be our wish and purpose that the processes of peace, when they are begun, shall be absolutely open, and they shall involve and permit henceforth no secret understandings of any kind. The day of conquest and aggrandizement is gone by, so is also the day of secret covenants, entered into in the interest of particular governments, and likely at some unlooked-for moment to upset the peace of the world. It is this happy fact, now clear to the view of every public man whose thoughts do not